Welcome to Empire Building, the podcast where we talk about building big businesses and even bigger lives. I'm your co-host, Kimber Lovett-Minkiti.
I'm Seychelle Van Poole.
And I'm Wendy Papazan. Hi, guys. We're so excited to be talking about one of my favorite wealth building ideas, investments, and I think something that all of us have done probably for many years, which is to talk about how to purchase and accumulate rental properties.
I love rental properties.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, when did you guys buy your first one? What was that story?
This is probably one of my favorite real estate stories. I was 23. And right before I got into real estate, I met a guy named Jeff at a happy hour that had like 100 rental properties. And I didn't realize like what that even meant, right? Nobody teaches that in school. And so I was like, oh, that sounds terrible. It sounds like a lot of headaches and calls. And I know what kind of a tenant I probably was. And so I was like, oh, it must be terrible. And he's like, I don't know, it's not that bad. This is like in 2002, he was like, I don't know, I cash flow, I don't know, $1,000 a month off of each of them. And I'm thinking like times 100. I can do that math. And so I started asking him. I was like, whoa.
Say more. Right.
Yep. And so I cornered him with Lone Star beers and bought him beer all night and like cornered him, like asking him what he did. And he was like, it's so simple. He was like, you just need a little bit of cash and you buy your first property. So we didn't have any cash because we were like 22 when I got into real estate and we didn't have any property. So we decided for our wedding to find where all the stores were that would let you register for wedding gifts and return it for cash. So we went and registered all over the place, like everything. They were like, oh, it's going to be a really important decision, the things you make. And I'm like, yeah. Scan. Like, register for everything. And I had a spreadsheet and every time we received a gift, I had a spreadsheet. So I wrote it down, I sent a thank you note, and then I put it to the side. And so we went and made a total haul returning all of our wedding gifts and bought our first rental property. We kept the white sheets, I think a lamp and some white dinner plates is all we kept.
Wow.
And we returned everything else. And we bought a rental in Canyon Creek in Richardson up here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And we still own it, have had the same tenants now for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great wedding gift.
That was what we bought it. Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow. That's
I think
so
it was
powerful.
a good wedding gift. It was a good wedding gift.
Amazing
Well, of
wedding
course.
gift.
Yeah, of course. Like think about all that stuff that would just be gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
probably. You would just been using it for 17 years and probably be ready to.
If you ever used it, I still think I have wedding gifts in our garage.
Absolutely. Well, and it was such a good lesson on I think it was like $11,500 is our down payment. It was a $155,000 house, which we bought on a 6.75 mortgage with a 7.75 second mortgage. And it was $155,000.
What year was that?
2007, June of 2007. About just a little over a year after we got married. And because we saved up a little extra from wedding gifts. And then we rented it out to a family that had had a bankruptcy. And they were super sweet, though, and he was a teacher. And they've lived in the house ever since, had 2 daughters. And it's now, I think we owe $55,000 on it now. And it's worth conservatively $375 today. So
amazing.
Not bad.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was our first one, though. So you don't need as much as you think you do sometimes to get into your first property. That's what I will say.
True. That's true.
Yeah, ours was the house we had when we got married was our first rental property. We moved into our second house. So that was our first rental was that we decided, to buy real estate and wait. And we still have it today. That was back in 2006. And so we, part of understanding the neighborhood, when that opportunity came on, a developer actually kind of got upside down in a property across the street. And we were like, oh, great, we're going to buy it and we're going to finish the renovation. And when it was done and we were moving into it, we were like, well, what are we going to do with this house? And we live in an area, Washington, D.C., where Catholic University is. So there's a huge student population. And so that can be both great from a cash flow standpoint and also challenging when there's a beer pong table on what used to be the first place you served your Thanksgiving dinner. Sometimes I would walk through horrified at what had happened to this house that I had spent so much time lovingly putting together. But it was a great, space. And so we were able to then start to build that first set of rental properties right in the neighborhood where we were living. So you were like, right, also able to have eyes on it and see it, and can also be interesting because the tenants were on a Saturday would be like, there's a problem, and they know we live across the street, which was also lots of fun. But it was a great way to kind of that was the foundation of the original, like our first 5 properties were properties that we had owned, lived in, or were in that immediate area around where we lived, which was really fun. And we still have it today.
Beer pong story true?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, they literally cracked the granite in one of our, we've had to completely gut. Actually, Bo's, my sister-in-law just moved to Washington, D.C. a year ago Thanksgiving. And she moved into a property that we bought from a neighbor that I went on a listing appointment for at 7 months pregnant. We bought it. We used it we renovated it just enough. And it was a student rental for about 13 years. They had pretty much, it was literally, we ended up gutting it and completely renovating it afterwards. So you have to kind of be prepared for that part of it. But yeah, it's been a fun run of college house rentals.
I love that. That's great.
Awesome.
Well, and we had a very similar situation. Our first house was our first rental property. And we lived in it it was just a small 2-bedroom, 1 bath in a great area of town. And, we've just been so blessed by buying in the right neighborhood at the right time here in Austin and seeing our wealth grow as a result. We bought that for $175.
Amazing.
And I think last year in 2022 when everything was peaking, it was about $1 million.
Wow.
Just for the dirt.
That's amazing.
For the dirt. Yeah, for the dirt. It's a lot lower now. Our prices continue to plummet here in Austin, Texas. Everything's on sale. So if anybody's looking for a great deal, everything's on sale here.
It's all
That's
cyclical.
right.
That's the part to remember is and it's only a bad time to sell it if it's when you're selling at a bad time and you need to sell it.
That's right.
You don't have
Well,
to
that
sell
sort of gets us to the definition of a buy and hold, right? What are we talking about when we say buy and hold? So it refers to a property that you're purchasing with the intent to own for a longer period of time versus if you're flipping or doing a renovation where you're rehabbing, an investor might be in and out in 6 to 12 months or faster or a little bit longer depending on your market. But this one's one that hey, I'm gonna buy. I love that both Wendy, Say, and I, those first properties are still in our portfolios today. And so they are longer term buy and holds. So what do you need to ask yourself, right? Ladies, what would you need to ask yourself before you buy? And the first ones is how much free cash, I love Say's story, do you need, right? How much free cash do you need to have, whether you're buying, renovating, and then renting? Renovating on our end, right? Always thinking it's going to be more and it's going to take longer than you think, right? And certainly in DC, everything's old. And so we're always the contingency, we're that probably shouldn't be 10, it should be 20% contingency plan. And that's going to take longer than you think it's going to get it back up and ready for cash flow.
The question that we've been asking lately with kind of getting everything together is, what is your longer term strategy for real estate investing? And when we first started investing, it was an equity play. We were less worried about the cash flow side of things. We were more worried about buying something in a great neighborhood at a decent price. It wasn't necessarily the best price you've ever received, but it was a fair price that we could rent it out and, make a little bit extra on it. But it was really about getting into the right areas. And so it was for the equity upside. And now a lot of what we're looking at buying is in different parts of the country with different goals. We're looking for more cash flow. So we may not be buying the best neighborhood with the best upside. It might be a little bit different of a tier of a property, but going for more cash flow instead of necessarily going for the long-term equity on a property, it's interesting. And sometimes you can get both, but sometimes you have to choose. And so it's good to know what your goals are going in. And I want to amplify Tiffany, one of our other co-hosts, because she did a really good job of walking me through that exercise of asking that question. Since we'd always gone for equity, that now that we're going for cash flow, she kind of helped us clarify when we were reassessing our goals of how we wanted to look at that, which is really cool.
I love that. Well, and what's great about rental properties, unlike a lot of other investments, is there's a lot of ability to sort of change them to suit your needs in the moment, not in the moment, but I mean for your long-term strategy. So just to give you an example of that, we had my dad gifted me our lake cottage that I had grown up going to, in the summers as a kid. And about 3 years ago, we turned it into an Airbnb. And we did very well during COVID. And then my dad ended up deciding to move to Texas and move into an assisted living center. And so that was going to be a little tough because it was going to be a lot of, cash outlay for him every single month, which he just really couldn't afford. And so what we did was we took that lake house, which was an Airbnb, and it was kind of this last year, it wasn't doing as well like a lot of Airbnbs because we weren't really hyper focused on it. And then in Minnesota, you're only Airbnb and being it for maybe 5 months. So we took that and we turned it into, we did a 1031 exchange. We bought a fourplex in Fargo near the university, just like Kimber's. And now that property throws off enough cash to pay for my dad's assisted living bill every month. So it's pretty much an even swap. It's about $4,000 in cash, and that's about what it costs for him. And had we just sold that lake cabin, 5 or 10 years ago, whenever he gave it to me, it would have only lasted a few years. Honestly, the cash from that would have only lasted a few years, but we turned it into this cash flowing asset that now can pay my dad every single month until he doesn't need it anymore,
While you're still building equity on the primary asset.
While complete strangers are, Yep.
I love it.
So really powerful. Really powerful. So I think another thing you want to ask is like, what's your tolerance for risk?
Yeah.
Everybody has a different risk tolerance. I know, Seychelle, you're a little bit more of a chicken. So are you, Kimber, I think a little bit. Yeah.
It's a very calculated risk.
I'm the least chicken among us. So
I'm stepping out of it, but yes, I'm definitely like how much. What I think one of the things we found, like our first, probably the next 3 or 4 that thankfully now we've been able to unload were, in that 2008, 2009 period, we bought houses that we intended to flip. Well, what happened, right? The market crashes. We've renovated them. We've got tons of cash in them. We've got debt. We've got rate, and they weren't moving. And so the rental, we actually just did this right now in DC in one of our renovations. So understanding the buy and hold potential, even if you're starting out saying, yes, the market looks great. Like we're going to buy right now, right? We're just peaking at these rates. So I think this is a big one, is understand your risk tolerance. And then what if something maybe had one use? And so those became buy and holds for us. And so now every single, even in the best markets, in our performers for flips, we always look at what's the market, what's the rental market, what's the worst case here, making sure that we're going to be okay in the event that we have to hold it for a few years or flip it into a buy and hold property.
I think that's super smart.
So smart. That's so smart. Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine. His name is Tarl Yarber. He works with Brandon Turner at Bigger Pockets. I know. Tarl, he should be a pirate. Tarl Yarber. And he was telling me that he started out his career and he flipped over 275 properties and he didn't keep a single one.
Wow.
So here he is, decades later.
Lots of active cash.
Imagine if he kept 10%.
10, as I say, just how many?
Yeah,
10%. Yeah, well, 5% of all those.
That's such a good exercise, actually, Wendy, is, if you're thinking about doing rental properties, how much cash do you really need? What's the actual goal behind why you're buying a property? So many people accidental themselves into landlords, or somebody told them to do it, so they did it, but they didn't really have a strategy behind it. So really coming up with what is our monthly nut? What is our actual expenses? And how many of those properties would we need at a certain cash flow to all of a sudden be financially free? And then coming up with how long do you intend to keep them? I was talking to Ryan, one of our business coaches today, and she and I were talking about her strategy around rentals, and they have had, upwards of 25. They've had as low as 3. And she said, one thing we've always decided is we have 3 kids. We're never going to go below 3 rentals because we have 3 properties that are legacy properties that we're going to keep, and one of each of those is going to become a kid's property. So we'll never go below 3 rentals, but we might lever up, lever down, play with different strategies with the other ones. And I thought that was just really nice, having clarity around what that rental meant to them, what the long-term hold and goal was for it, and their intended use. And I just think when you're thinking about rentals, having some insight into what your life looks like and what you want that to be is really important.
Absolutely. So you got to think about, right, not only risk tolerance, but risk tolerance for dealing with rehabs, contractors, tenants, buyers. You really have to build your team, build your your buy and hold squad. You want to make sure like you're working with an agent that knows the area if you're not like a licensed agent in that local market. Definitely getting somebody who knows the market, having your contractors, having a bench of contractors, right? Like that is probably the place where a lot of us financially, like if you have one budget, somebody goes away, there's a problem. So I think not only where they are, but what's your risk tolerance around the whole process to get them on the market and then turned over when tenants change out.
Well, and I think sometimes even if you are a licensed agent, sometimes you need an investor agent to help you.
Yes,
absolutely.
I remember we had a woman on our team and she was kind of in a rental property limbo. She was just looking at so many things. And finally, I just said to her, I said, Claire, just meet with Jen and she will undoubtedly have you in a great property soon. And within the week, she was in her contract. And this was someone who'd just been kind of in their head for months and months and months and months. So just get someone who can help you take action. So I think that's really great. And then I think you want to figure out, are you going to manage your properties yourself? Depending on where they are. I think sometimes if you are in the situation where you're moving out of your first house, that's an ideal way to really understand what it takes to manage a property and whether you have the stomach for it. I actually recommend you manage your first property, especially if it's in the city that you live in, which sounds kind of crazy. And I think you need to understand what to hold your property manager as a standard to, and then understand the work. I mean, it's a lot less work than you actually think it is, especially if you've got your first one. I mean, I know when I had my first property, I probably spent, I don't know, an hour a month on it at the most, But then what are you going to do when you get 10 plus rentals? What does your property management strategy look at that point? Are you going to do that yourself? Are you going to have, if you've got a team, are they going to help you? I still don't have a property manager for my properties that are in Austin because my team handles it for me and they're mostly higher end rentals. So it makes it a bit easier.
It's interesting. Like that was like almost like a prenup for us. Like we did not manage our rentals from day one. And so it's interesting. I love hearing your perspective of like, I recommend you manage them. And I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that. I am not. Like, and so it's cool. You can do it either way.
Even for 6 months. That's all I'm saying is because I think probably had you done that, you might have just managed it yourself, honestly.
No, I mean, we've built up a property management company and sold it off. Like it's just not what I want to do. And I also know, I mean, there's a reason why you guys have nicknamed me like Blonde Jesus in our circle. It's because I can be too nice at times. And for tenants, I know myself and I know that they will, I can't pay rent and I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'll believe them. And I will totally be like, it's okay, you can pay late, right? Like especially when I was really young and I didn't have like the saltiness that I'm getting now, I would have absolutely let people take advantage of me. So I knew myself.
Say.
I know.
Yes, we do
super
too.
salty. I can't wait. I'm going to be a really salty old broad. It's going to be so fun. You guys are going to be really freaked out on the podcast. But I knew at 22-year-old say, like, I was not good enough with boundaries, firm enough, like salty enough to be able to handle tenants in that. So I wanted a professional in between me and the tenant because I knew that I would retain more money if the tenant didn't have access to me. So I think you have to know yourself. And so for me, I wanted none of it because I knew that was not going to be the best use of our investment for me to do it. I would probably lose his money at it. Yeah,
for sure. Well, and I started our first rental property came right on the heels of my first baby.
Amazing.
Where I quit my job.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a full-time job, for 5 years until I got back into real estate. So I just had a lot of time. We didn't have a lot, it represented a lot of money for us at the time.
Absolutely. So,
and now some of our properties are, I think our number one rents for $4,300 a month. So I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. At 10%, that's $6,000 a year, so.
Absolutely.
Anyway, to each his own.
Yeah,
that's why you got to ask these great questions.
That's why you got to ask these great questions. I think last two, and then we'll keep going, right? What rate of return do you get from your other investments? Like, right? So I think this is great. And what's the appreciation do you expect from that real estate asset? I think that goes also back to location and sort of what's your philosophy, right? Like, we've got, like, Wendy, you talked about the neighborhoods that you're in. That might mean going in, you're going to have a little bit more. Maybe it's not going to cash flow as much, but you're banking on sort of an upside of appreciation, the type of tenant that you're going to have coming in, gaps between your tenants. If you've got an area that just turns over and continues to sort of hold like demand in your area or the area that you're in. Those are all things you want to know as you're thinking about what's the expectation for the performance of that asset over time.
Love that. I absolutely love that. Then, when you're considering what you want to invest in, there's different types of real estate, and in particular rental properties that you can look at. And what we're going to focus on today is ones with humans in them instead of businesses, because you could also go the commercial route when you're looking at investing in properties like this. But for ease, we're going to talk about rental properties that people live in, because it's a different type of loan. And oftentimes when you're newer as an investor, it's an easier step into the investing game. So the first option is single family homes. It sounds like actually all three of us on the podcast today started with single family properties. It's oftentimes you can turn your first home into that, or like we did, we bought our first property, was our first rental, but you usually have a lower down payment. You have better mortgage terms. You can do a 30-year fixed mortgage, so it makes it affordable. And so that's a really easy one. The second one is a multifamily, which would be like, I'd consider a multifamily to be a small multifamily. So anywhere between like 2 and 6 doors or 2 and 6 units. And so that could be a duplex, a fourplex, a sixplex. And they can be more cost effective because oftentimes they all share the same roof. So if you're replacing the roof, it's for all 6 at once. And the maintenance and utilities can be split between multiple people. Also, if you have one unit empty, you're still cash flowing on the rest of it, which is really nice. Apartments, do any of y'all invest in apartment buildings right now? That's the third one. Are any of y'all invested in apartment buildings?
We have some in the portfolio. Some of those are parts of our development projects that sort of have a rental component. Not less what we did when we had sort of one-offs on the condo side. We definitely sold those off and now have more of the multifamily assets.
That's great. Portfolio. So apartments are going to be your larger multifamily units. So it's anywhere from 12 units on up to several hundred or thousand, just depending on the size of the unit or complex that you have. Sometimes these even need full-time maintenance managers or full-time office managers. So this is becoming more of a business for you than a passive income strategy. You're growing a business, and we talk about building a big business and an even bigger life. So that's something for you to consider. And these can be subject to more strict regulations and requirements, building codes, commercial building codes, sprinkler systems, like all sorts of different things that need to exist within your zoning laws and tenant landlord laws. And those can be a little bit more complex. So if you're doing larger ones like apartment buildings, you just want to be really aware of either who's managing it or the local laws and ordinances, because you can get a little bit more sideways on those quicker if you don't know what you're doing. And also you're getting into more of a commercial loan at this point. So your terms are going to look different. They're maybe a 5-year loan or a 10-year loan on these, instead of what you could do with a up to 4 units or 4+1, so up to 5 units. A lot of times you can do a conventional loan with that, which means your down payment is less and you're usually locked in for a 15, 20, or 30-year loan on it. So it's going to be a little bit more predictable for you. And then the last one's condominiums. And condos are, they're similar to an apartment complex, but they're different in that it's a single piece of real estate with each door. So you have your own deed, your own ownership of each of those individual doors. And they're nice because they can have I think about a lot of traveling executives or executives that are moving from city to city. These are really great. And they'll have amenities and walkability sometimes, like pools, tennis courts, workout facilities. The one thing you need to know though is there's 2 things we found with investing in these. Number one is if you get over a certain percentage of investors versus owners in the condo complex, it can actually cause you to have a harder time selling it on the back end. We owned a condo like this and got stuck with that, where it was only 8 units in the condo complex, and it ended up having 4 of them that were investor owned, which put it at the 50% line. And it was harder for us to sell it because it could only sell to an investor. So just be aware of that. And then the other thing with it is homeowners association dues or your HOA dues can skyrocket. And so that can crunch your cash flow. So just be really aware when you're doing a condo, be really aware of what your HOA dues are, what your insurance and cash reserves are with the homeowners association, because that's how you can go sideways on those guys pretty easily.
Yeah, and condo doc review, depending on your your area. Definitely
time.
you have condo associations that certainly in our area right now have really cracked down on Airbnbs, short-term rentals, investments. And so if you bought that to think, hey, I want this to be a longer term investment, or you bought it as a rental, and then like saying either the investor ratio goes off or you the association decides that they don't want that many, then all of a sudden your plan, someone else had the power to change your plan.
Yeah. It is. That's exactly a great way to put that, Kimber. Somebody else has control.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Well, number 3. So there's pros and cons of owning rental properties versus other investments, right? There's lots of ways to build your wealth. And I know that all of us are pretty well diversified. I don't know, Kimber, maybe you're a little heavier in real estate percentage-wise than the rest of us. But one of the benefits is you can get monthly income. So that's one of the biggest benefits is you get regular cash flow. So there's just income that's coming in every single month. It actually may be less than you think. And I would say it's a little bit harder right now to make properties cash flow. You have to put a lot more money down, especially after maintenance and taxes and insurance and things like that. So
Absolutely.
that's definitely one pro is that monthly income coming in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Fannie just announced, right? So the 5% on multifamily, 2 to 4 units. So that, like to Wendy, your point, like if you're able to get in, and part of what are they doing? They're trying to help where they can push income. So that's available for people who are going to own or occupy one of those units. So a 5 to a 20% down payment really does change the economics on the deal. So if that's something in your local area, it's worth checking out or checking out what the options are on that.
That was just announced last week. Yeah.
It just goes into effect mid-November. So it's definitely something to amplify if you've got clients who are either your own or people in your world that this may actually help them get in the game on investing.
Love that.
The other is just appreciation. This is kind of the cool one. I mean, you heard that in all 3 of our stories that it's sort of like, right, you hold real estate and wait. And so home values go up, especially over time. There's not been a 10-year period in U.S. history where home values in that 10-year band have appreciated. Oftentimes they might come in these like tighter, concentrated areas, but over 10 years, right, real estate appreciates, which is important. So over 3 to 4% annually nationwide. So understand your local area. But you also get, as Wendy said it, right? You have complete strangers paying off the debt, right? They're paying down the principal while you're building that appreciation. And I always love the math, right? Like when Shay talked about that $11,000 investment, but she's appreciating that entire original $150,000 investment. So you look at the return on that, you're gaining appreciation. We talk about 3 to 4% annually, but on the full value of that asset, which is really, it's where the fun stuff gets to happen.
That's why I always send my tenants a Christmas card, all of them.
Yeah.
I say, thank you for paying my debt off. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
so grateful for you.
We
and then I also say, well, when you're ready to
buy yourself,
to build wealth of your own, let me know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I actually was just talking to a tenant of one of our rentals down in Dallas that we bought as a foreclosure in the downturn. I was talking to him this week, and we helped his family buy and sell a house, and they're going to buy again. And I'm like, hold that one as a rental. And he's like, we have 4 daughters now. And I'm like, or you might need the cash, but if we can keep it, let's keep it. Just the math I did on, so that $11,500 we turned into $293,750. And if you divide that by 17 years, it's basically making $17,000 a year on our $11,500.
It's amazing.
That's not bad.
Pretty good
That's not
math.
bad.
I'll take that.
Yeah, that's not a bad return. I'll take that. That's not many things you can put $11,500 into and get $17,500 back a year. That's pretty cool.
No.
Then the other side of this that a lot of people don't talk about is you get tax benefits by owning a rental property. And there's 2 different ways you can do this. You can be a passive real estate investor and get tax benefits, or if you happen to also be in selling real estate or an active real estate investor, there are additional tax write-offs you get, but let's just talk about it as a real estate investor for a second. So as a landlord, you can qualify for certain tax reductions for your rental property. And these can be anything including your mortgage interest. So you can write off your interest on your property on your mortgage that you're paying. The property taxes, which if you live in Texas, property taxes are high. So that's a big one. Those have been painful the last couple of years. Your operating expenses, including your property manager.
I bet mine are worse than yours.
I don't really, well, your cash flow is better though. Your cash flow is better. So
no.
Well, we could do a spreadsheet comparison in a little bit.
We'll do a
It's-
comparison.
Ugh.
Which states should you
Makes me
buy?
wanna
And
gag.
Yeah.
I know.
It's
We don't
often
have
so
the state
bad, yeah.
income tax though. So if you invest in Texas, you also want to live in Texas because we don't have the state income tax. Your depreciation, which is very cool, and you can either do an accelerated depreciation or depreciate it over 28 and a half years. And then your repairs. So you actually get to write off, if you're improving the property, you get to write that off as well. And make sure if you are collecting rental income, it doesn't just go in your pocket. You have to report that as income. So make sure with your taxes, if you are collecting rental income on a property, you do need to report that to the IRS as income that you earned. And then the write-offs get taken off with that. So that's how you get to play that game.
And I think that balance, it's why a lot of times when people jump in the game and they're flipping, and then they're all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, all the upside had to come. I had to claim it in the year that I received it, right? So it is like a lot of times when we are advising our clients who are like, I want to be a flipper, I want to do, and we're like, you're likely going to want to diversify that portfolio for all of these benefits that Say just mentioned.
Yes, 100%.
Well, and you know, we're talking about all of us have a bigger portfolio, but honestly, one additional rental property can really change the trajectory of someone's life.
Absolutely.
So if you're a real estate agent and you haven't purchased A, your own home, or B, a rental property for yourself, you need to make that a big goal for yourself because you guys are in the industry and helping your clients navigate that. I mean, they're going to be literally clients for life. For you, you know, it's the conversation that Seychelle was talking about, which is having that conversation with the seller. Hey, have you thought about keeping this as a rental? Yeah, of course, you're not going to get the listing and you're going to have a client for life because they're going to look up at some point and they're going to be able to use that rental property to pay for college. Yeah, pay for college.
For girls, that's a lot of college.
That's a lot of college. Or, you know, at the end of someone's life, right? Having one extra property is going to dramatically change their ability. You know, they could sell that property and turn it, just like my dad did, turn it into a fourplex somewhere and use that cash flow to pay for their, their housing. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. We all have a big opportunity to help people.
I love that.
All right. So next thing is you get to kind of leverage your cash, which is pretty remarkable. You know, I talk to people from other places and there's a lot of countries where if you buy a property, you have to put 100% down. In Russia,
That's crazy.
You got a property that's $100,000, you got to pay $100,000 for it. And sometimes people from other countries come to the United States and they understand like, wow, I can buy a property for 3.5% down. I can buy a fourplex for 5% down. They almost they're freaking out. They're like, why doesn't everybody do this? I'm like, I know, it's crazy. And so like, for instance, if you want to put money in the stock market, okay, so if I want to buy $100,000 worth of stocks, I'm going to need $100,000.
Yeah.
If I want to buy a piece of property worth $100,000, I only need a fraction of that, $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 in order to actually buy that property. And then, so you just need a lot less money to kind of like get into the game. So leveraging your cash is really powerful.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us this week, you guys. So we talked a lot today about the pros of real estate and why you want to build wealth through real estate and build a real estate portfolio. And if you like this episode, please share some feedback with us because the next episode you're going to hear from us, we're actually going to switch it up and we're going to talk about the cons of real estate investing and the pitfalls and the traps. Dun, dun, dun. So, dun, 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 dun. Oh, no, that sounds more triumphant. No, don't do that one.
We're going to show
It's
you
more
to
gonna
tell
be
you
the
so that you
lower.
can triumph through them.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. Yes. So, y'all, thanks for joining us. And we can't wait to share the second part of this episode with you where we talk about the other side of real estate investing. So go out there and build a big business and an even bigger life. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.